In fact, I just started the recording, so be careful whatever you're going to say now.
Yeah. We'll be on our best behavior.
Or need to beep out a lot in post-production.
Yeah. We'll try to catch it if it happens live. I have an app, Ollie, just like,
Oh,
you
that's
gotta be
really
prepared.
cool.
A lot of my friends are prepared. I have a lot of friends, and they give me a lot of suggestions. So if ever you feel like you're going to say the wrong thing, then you got it.
Excellent.
We'll keep this child rated, so no words and no type of words, okay?
You might need to use it a lot when I'm talking.
Just do it in French, and then we won't know.
And it will
Oh,
sound
you
very
never
good.
know.
It would sound so good. And just for everybody while we're thinking about getting ready, if you have any type of burning questions, we're going to have a way for you to ask those questions. And we are really here to just barely talk so that we can get your questions out and give you exactly what you want. So we highly encourage you to ask questions. And if you don't ask any questions, we'll start asking you all questions.
So we have two hosts now. Someone with the name I'm the host. Okay, let's start, shall we? Okay, hello everyone. This is Muhammad Jamil here. I'm very happy to have you all here joining with us today. So as you all know, the agenda of the event is to discuss how Agile can be implemented on non-IT industries, mainly design and construction, oil and gas, and hardware industries. For today's event, we do have one more event next week with the same topic where we'll be discussing the same for some of the other industries as well. So we are here today for about 2 hours. I would appreciate if everybody can uh, keep their mics mute while the event is going on. We do have a question and answer session where you guys can jump in and you can talk about or you can ask your questions. But during the presentation, if mics are muted, I'm fine if you guys can switch your cameras on. But your mics, if you can please keep them muted. So I will quickly discuss how we are planning to take this event forward, what we are going to do in next 2 hours. So right now, I'll be talking about the sessions we have planned for the event. So first 5 minutes, I will be just quickly talking about the event. Then we have a friend from Coast to Reach, which is our sponsor organization for this event. They sponsored us for all the marketing and everything. So they will be introducing their organization for a few minutes, and then we will start with the panel introduction. After which we will have a presentation from each of the panel members. Meanwhile, I'm posting a link in the chat where you guys can park your questions, and during the end of the event, we'll be coming to all your questions which are posted there, and we'll be answering them one by one. I've just placed the link in the chat. I'm just sharing my screen for a minute just to show you how this can be organized. I believe you guys can see my screen now. Okay.
Yes.
So this is the third party tool we are using. Once you open the link, this is what you will see. Maybe slightly differently because I'm logged in right now. So the the idea is you can post your questions here. Just click on these plus icons. I have created 4 columns here. If you have a question that is general, you can park it here. How are you all? And you can just post it. We'll be coming to all these questions. If you have a question that needs to be directed to a panel member, let's say your question is about construction industry, you can ask Felipe or Ali or Antonio. or you can put it here in the general session and we'll decide. If you think a question is already posted and you want to ask the same question, don't post it twice. It will make our lives a bit easier. If the question is already posted, all you can do is you can just come here and like it. So the more number of likes are there, that will help us see which questions are asked more often. So we'll pick those questions first. That's how we are going to be organizing. If you have any questions about this, if you face any issues, just put it in the chat, and I'll be looking at the chat to answer those. So this is mainly it. We'll be allocating most of the time for your Q&A towards the end. While the speakers are talking about their industries, maybe you can take notes, ask counter question, or you can ask any other questions, and we'll try our best to answer as many questions as we can. So I will. I would like to ask Mr. Srijit from Coach to Reach to introduce us about Coach to Reach for a few minutes, and then we can start with the panel introduction. Over to you, Srijit. You are mute, Srijit. You need to unmute.
All right, so I did not realize that I was on mute. So good evening and good morning to the ones who have logged in from the EST timings. My name is Srijit and I'm part of Coach to Reach. So here's a quick introduction about the company Coach to Reach. We are, a set of committed, motivated professionals looking at being a part of your transformation process, the transformation journey. And we're just doing it by making it simple, real time in a collaborative space. And we have, our methodology is by introducing brain-based learning techniques and having a set of methodologies and teaching formats, which is making it very applicable in the real world scenario also. So we're not just limiting it to only a certification program, but also trying to make it more application based in the changing, VUCA world. It's constantly changing, right? So that's about the base for our organization. Now I'll just take you to the next slide, which is why Coach to Reach. Now there are a lot of organizations providing certification courses and other training programs, but we are targeting, we are rather looking at being a part of the transformation journey and making it measurable and keeping it not just limited to the professional growth, but also the overall growth that benefits anyone in their personal life as well as to the organization that they're working, which means they add value to the organization that you're working in. So that's how the entire transformation journey is designed. And the next part is how we train and how we are different, or how we go about doing this. So in fact, all the trainings that we have is virtual instructor-led training programs, which means they are, constantly there on a live classroom training setup. And we have TBR techniques, the training from the back of the room techniques. And all of these is primarily looking at how we can engage the classroom, how we can make it more interactive. And this is what, being Agilist, you would completely agree that this is what is required in this current scenario, right? So we just want to make sure that the effectiveness is more and it actually enhances the skill sets and helps you utilize this expertise in the real world scenario. And all our faculty are subject matter expertise with subject matter experts with large amount of experience behind them, who have been practically implementing these on their real life scenarios and in their professional scenarios. So all our certified trainers are approved by the respective bodies. And that's how we set up our entire coaching system, right? So here are some of the offerings that we have under IC Agile. We have some 6 courses right now. We have some scaled Agile courses. Then there is Kanban, there's training from back of the room, and we just keep, we are growing. So let me tell you that in the days to come, there are much more that we are going to introduce. So what I'll also do is I'll just leave our company LinkedIn profile so that you could connect with us on LinkedIn and that would kind of give you insights about what we are associated with and how we could add value to your lives, right? So wish you all the best and wish you have I really hope you have a good day today in this next couple of hours, and have some good value addition. So let me just quickly send across the details of the organization on the chat, and probably you could connect, right? So, all right, then have a good time. Thank you so much, Jamil. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Srijit. So I have posted all the panel members' LinkedIn profiles in the chat. Those who are not connected yet, they can connect. So I will start by introducing myself, and then I'll pass it on to each of the panel members. My name is Jamil. I'm originally from Pakistan, based out of Bahrain. I'm working as an enterprise agile coach for about 14 years now. Um, I started off as a programmer, then switched to team lead, project manager, then switched to agile, and currently working as an enterprise agile coach. I'm also a IC agile instructor as well, and we are here today trying to explore how we can implement agile in different industries. I'm mainly from IT, and always uh, curious to know how agile can be implemented in other organizations, and that's why we have our expert panel here. Thanks everybody again for joining us today. um, Felipe, if you can introduce yourself quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So
One,
thank you,
that's
Jamil. So my name is Felipe, and I have fun toys in Zoom, as you can see. If you haven't connected with me already, please, there's the way to connect with me here, 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 or here. So you choose. Get it how you want. I've been in the design and construction industry for over 20 years. Originally, I graduated as an electrical engineer. I know, it's so crazy. Never used it, went right to construction immediately, and I've loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it. I've been in the industry working for large general contractors. I've worked for 3 different companies, big general contractors. Now I'm working for McCarthy Building Companies, helping lead their program for lean construction across the entire organization, coast to coast. And I do practice agile and lean construction. I've been doing that for about the last 10 years and discovered Scrum. Didn't even know Scrum existed until 2014. But once I got a hold of it, never let go of it. And I've been using Scrum in all of my work since 2014, including getting my master's in business administration, including every single project I work on, whether my team does Scrum or not, including as a project manager, including as helping people in the field, including in initiatives in the company. There's really no limit where you can't do it. Even some volunteer work as well. So if you're out there and you're thinking, how can I use it? How can I use it? You just need to start using it. That's going to be the theme of everything that I say today. If you haven't started it, just start using it. You can't go wrong because you're here. So you already know that there's a contrast between traditional methods that crush people and agile and Scrum methods that enable people to do more of what they want, more of what they love. And that's what we want to encourage. I want to encourage everyone to enjoy their work like I do. Love my work. That's why I'm here on a Saturday, because the more people that can know that there are better ways to work, the better. And I'd even come here on a Sunday, Jamil. So thank you for inviting me. That's the way to connect with me. I'm going to pass it over to my friend, my new friend. Jamil, who's gonna be my next friend? There he is.
You can pick one.
I pick Ali.
Okay.
Excellent. Well, I have some cool gimmicks as well. For me, it's however some dancing dudes, unfortunately. But hi everyone. Good to be here. My name is Ali. I just mentioned already that I'm an absolute agile nerd. It's the truth. I have been since 2009. And for me, it all started when I just mentioned that when I was working at a small pharmaceutical company in the Netherlands, because that's where I lived. I live in the beautiful country of the Netherlands, which is literally the size of my pinky nail. So over there, I figured out that the people that were making new functionality, patient monitoring systems and document management systems, and that's anything that a pharmaceutical company typically develops if it's related to software. they were spending more of their time developing documentation, all kind of documentation to prove that the documentation is correct, and just to be sure, having traceability to make sure that the documentation that proves that the documentation need to be correct is documented. Anyway, it was sort of an eye opener because I saw that the people that were actually doing the work, the magicians that could make new functionality, that could make things faster, things more efficient, that could deliver value, they were spending their time on doing things that they didn't like. So I just saw the energy flow outside of that company. So anyway, I thought, maybe there's something else out there that we can use. And that's how I sort of stumbled into the world of Agile, initially with Scrum. So fast forward, I became a trainer and I became a consultant. It's a little bit of a nasty word sometimes, but I see that the word Agile has been misused or is being misused a lot. And I find that a waste. It's a total waste. And in the end, it has the most impact on the people that do the work, the magicians that create value. And I thought, you know what? If I can spend my time in a good way, then I should spend my time in helping those people to at least have the freedom to be able to deliver value, to do the things that they do best. I work for a small company called Blink Lane Consulting and has a training company called Gladwell Academy. Give a lot of trainings in Europe and in India. And since 2018, I think beginning of 2018, I stumbled into the world of physical product development, so-called hardware. So that's what I'm going to talk about today, because I figured out that creating physical products with mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, with optics, with all kinds of architects is a whole different ballgame. So I'm going to talk about that. Happy to have you here. I hope that you have a lot of questions and that I can learn from you guys. Thanks a lot.
So I guess, Antonio, you are the only one remaining. Over to you.
Yeah, it's usually like that when someone needs to pick a friend, they pick the others. I'm used. So I'm Antonio Cobo. I'm from Spain, from the city that you can see on the virtual background, that is Toledo. It's one of the most beautiful cities in the world, so you can go there. But I won't be there to say hi to you because I live now in UK. And I have lived in France in the past as well for 9 years. I started as a Java developer in 2000, moved to France 2005, and it's when I discovered Agile, and it was the change between software development to project management, delivery management, and then Agile codes. When I discovered Agile, I realized that I was actually doing some things that they were already established as Agile practices, and I didn't know. So it was a good feeling to know, I'm doing something good and something in the right way because others are doing it with success. I decided to move in 2014 to UK. I have worked 5 years as a consultant, the last 3 years for BJSS, and then the last 2 years, the client that I'm working on is on the oil and gas industry. It's a lot of challenges on companies of oil and gas, but probably it's going to be pretty common in a lot of industries. It's funny, you're going to find out that all the problems or issues that you could have on any industry are similar to any other industry. Hopefully I will learn a lot from Felipe, from Ali, and from all of you. And hopefully you will be learning a little bit from me. With a little bit, I'm happy. I'm not putting a lot of high expectations on myself, but because I prefer just to do things step by step and focusing on small increments at a time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone. Thanks for the introductions. Nice to have you guys here. So let's start with the actual discussion. So I would like to pass it to Felipe, who is going to talk about his agile journey in design and construction industry and what he was able to do and how he was able to do that. Over to you, Felipe.
Yeah, thank you, Jamil. So I'm going to start first with the spoiler alert. I'm going to give you the end first. I'm going to start with the end. So today, I now work with over 5,000 people per year, and I work with anywhere from 8 to 10 project teams per month. So that's today. When I first started in this role as the National Director for Lean Construction at my company, McCarthy Building Companies, we're a large construction company working in the United States. I only was able to work with one team per month. So think about that. 1 to 8 to 10 on the high side. All demand is voluntary. So, and I'd look at me. I know I don't look it, but I'm still just barely 41. So I'm not stressed, not old. It's very rewarding work. That's the punchline. And there's also time saved using agile methods, lean construction methods, Scrum in particular. And there's been money that we've been able to realize as an organization that's gone back to the shareholders. And we're an employee-owned company, so it comes back to us. We know what those values are, and it reinforces the demand that is ever increasing. Like most days is a voluntary for me 12 plus hours a day because I have 3 time zones in the United States to help and engage with. So love it. It's absolutely fun. That's the punchline. That's what could happen. That's what's possible. And where did I start? I started not knowing anything. I was, born like every other human being with amnesia. And then fast forward, my parents raised me and I got some American culture. So that's where I ended up going to school. Electrical engineering is when I graduated. A friend of mine said, take a look at this job. It was a construction project and I never looked back. Went right into construction out of school, and been there ever since. Most of the time acting as a project manager. Halfway through my career, so 10 years in, I was working 7 days a week. My direct supervisor never said, Felipe, you're working too much. Maybe you should do less. No, it was, oh, you're doing that? Here's some more. Oh, you're homesick? We'll send someone to your house to give you change orders to work on while you're sick so you don't infect the rest of us, but you can keep working even while you're homesick. That's the environment that I worked in before I discovered lean construction. And in lean, we learned things from lean manufacturing. So for those of you in hardware that are borrowing from lean manufacturing, you got 2 thumbs up for me because that was a game changer. When I learned about what lean is, and specifically respect for people and continuous improvement, those 2 principles and values do have actions and enable so many other of the things that people think about as just tools to work. Things like pull planning or last planner system of production control, things like root cause analysis, things like A3 problem solving, things like frameworks like Scrum, and I'll even dare say it, even Kanban. Even Kanban has its place. It's lovely. So that's what I learned. And with just learning that little bit, I was able to, the first time in my professional career, learn at work. Then I was able to study, read, and practice because before I was just working. As an organization, most companies in the design and construction industry train their employees 2 days out of every calendar year on average. And that's true in general contractors. That's true in trade partners like electricians, plumbers, people that install wall. Most companies only train 2 days a year on average. It's very common. Even in our support groups, it's the same thing. And I talk to our peers across multiple different geographies here in the U.S., and I've talked to people abroad, and it's about the same. So there are very few organizations. Just to contrast it, like people that I have a friend that went to go work at Toyota North America. When they went to work at Toyota, they didn't get to go to work for a month. They were in training for a month before they went to work. So that's why we borrow from lean manufacturing, because they've got something special, something magical there. And I just love Toyota. I even drive a Toyota, and Toyota doesn't pay me anything to say that. It's how they treat their people and what they do is what makes it so important. And it's good to learn from other industries. Part of my learning when I was that 10-year mark, when I discovered what lean was, the book that I picked up was Lean Thinking by Womack and Jones. And I learned 3 things that I'm going to give you right now. You don't even have to read the book, but if you want to, it's an awesome book. I learned to understand what is value in terms of the customer. And that is something that a lot of people take for granted. A lot of people think they know what value is, but they forget to ask that other part of it is, who's my customer and what's valuable to them. Now, your customer is also people that receive your work, because if you're in a value stream, or if you're in a supply chain, like pretty much everybody on the phone is, somebody's going to receive the work you're giving. So you should not guess what they want. Ask them, be sure, do a little demo, create a little product, a little piece of service, try something out, get some rapid feedback, and see if that's what they want. And if that's what they want, give them more of that. And then that way you're not wasting your time. You can stop doing the things that they don't want, waste, and then you can maximize the things that they do want. And in the design and construction industry, just to give you some context for those of you from the other industries, in the United States, it's about a $3 trillion a year industry. 3 trillion with a T dollars. And people that study this, from academia, researchers, even the United States government looking at productivity, in research they found over year, about half of what we do in construction is waste, non-value added in terms of the customer. So the latest stat I pulled up was $1.6 trillion of non-value added waste, and construction makes up 13% of the world's GDP. I heard a statistic last week. I don't know if it's real, but somebody said it, so I'm going to say it. 1 out of 7 people in the world work in construction. That's a lot of people working in an industry that is only about 50% effective in delivering value. So keep that in mind. It's a lot. And then construction productivity, which everybody loves to measure, which I'm not a fan of measuring productivity. I'm a fan of measuring other things like velocity and Scrum. I love that when appropriate and for the team, not for somebody looking at a dashboard, 6,000 miles away. But that productivity that we measure in the industry in the United States has been flat since the 1970s. So for my great-great-grandfather's generation was the last time we saw productivity gains in our industry, as compared to manufacturing that's had exponential growth. And if this is manufacturing's productivity growth, this is agriculture's productivity growth over that same time period, and this is construction, flat, no change. It's like a time capsule. You can walk in and it looks just like it's 1970 in 2021. So it's not to say we don't have technology and it's complex, but that's the industry. So just painting a picture so you guys can see what I'm working in. We do have a lot of very smart and talented people, hungry people for new ways, and Agile and Scrum in particular is in high demand in our industry. When I started this in 2014, I started using Scrum on a traditional design build hard bid project for a private university. My team said, we don't want that software stuff. We're not going to do it. And they didn't do it. I did it by myself. It was awesome. I got to be the product owner, the Scrum Master, and the development team member all in one. It was so much fun. And then I got so good at it, all of the people that I was helping manage through that process, I was a project manager at the time, every one of the trades that I was overseeing told me, we've never made so much money on this type of project ever. Thank you. And I never told them that I was doing Scrum. I would just go through the framework with them. The owner I told the owner, because the owner said, how is it that you can do all these things, be in the field for 5 hours a day, and still, overrun the 3 of us here on the owner side with change orders on time and helping your subcontractors and knowing something about every issue on the project? And I said, duh, I use Scrum. And people are like, what is Scrum? This is Scrum to me. This is a picture of what Scrum looks like. For those of you that are doing SAFe, I'm sorry. You might want to just get all the way to Scrum. and I only say that because I hear about so many SAFe refugees that come to Scrum courses. And I know what you're up against and I know what you're fighting. And I'm here to tell you that if you learn what good Scrum is yourself and you practice it yourself with your team, you will find an unlimited number of people in your organization to partner with and to scale this. So I'm excited. I want to keep going, but I want to respect my time box and pass it to my new friend, Ali and Antonio. But you guys fight for it. Who's going to take it first? My money's on Ali.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. I'll take over. Thanks a lot, Felipe. So that was a strict 15-minute time box, right?
That was 10 minutes. I gave you bonus 5.
Yeah.
Ooh,
So
that's excellent.
Felipe wrapped up in exact 10 minutes, but we allocated 15 minutes each. So if you want to use extra time, you have that.
Philippe is just, he doesn't need 15 minutes. He can do his job. He can, bring in the value in just 10. He's like even more productive and has had the ability to do something else in the next 5 minutes, the remaining 5 minutes. Well, I'm gonna share some slides. A little bit of it'll help me in sharing my my story, because I've been an agile nerd that works in the area of physical product development, so-called agile in hardware development. I do assume that you're seeing a nice big sort of a slide that contains agile in hardware development, and my sort of how and the term that people use to name me.
Confirmed.
Is that correct? Good. So earlier today, I did the following. I just went to Google and I typed in agile and hardware. And I'm sorry, this screenshot gave me a Google Trends overview in Dutch, because I think Google is localized, has identified me correctly that I live in this country. But just looking at the blue line, as you can see, over time, so it started somewhere in 2004, but over time you can see a sort of a popularity index that Google uses. If it reaches 100, then it means it's super popular, and they have their own algorithm to identify that. I'm not really sure how they do that, but still, apparently they have some kind of an algorithm. So we are sort of on the right now, and looking at the blue line, it reaches, well, about a 20 in score out of 100. And then I went to try to search just for agile, and that's the red line. You could see that agile apparently over time, I mean, as a term, it became increasingly more popular. You can see that red line actually going up. You can see that red line basically stating that, there's more and more people that are actually and actively Googling on the term agile. And see that flat blue line all the way at the bottom? See that? That is still agile for hardware, or agile hardware. It's not that popular, compared to agile, or just the term agile. However, there are more and more companies that have been using agile methods or agile practices, or call it anything you want, but anything that is related to agile in the world of physical product development, and typically by applying the learnings that came out of software development. Excellent material has been published by Jeff Sutherland and by Joe Justice. I think it's your colleagues, Felipe, from Scrum Inc. Joe Justice has talked and published quite a lot about Team Wikispeed, one of his companies and his initiatives that he started. But the company Saab, a Swedish company that is pretty well known for the creation of cars, automobiles. They also make jet fighters. And they have been making jet fighters in an iterative approach, using an iterative way of working for a very long time. And it became the cheapest, most effective jet fighter that has been created or that is currently in production. They're using Scrum. Last year, November, we had so the firm that I work for has organized a summit, so-called RTE Summit, which is more of a safe thing, where the company Volvo came over and shared with us, with everybody that was attending, that they are using an iterative approach, mainly based on SAFe these days. So they're using that language to develop their cars. For instance, the V60 models and everything after that has been created using iterative approaches. agile teams and with product owners. There's a lot of Scrum there. There's some safe language in there, and similar things with Philips. Philips has been openly talking about how they have been creating medical products, and more than that, shavers, toothbrushes, all using agile. So the thing is, I've been very naive for a very long time, because I thought, you know what, methods can be copied and pasted in any environment. You'll have to do a little bit of effort, and then a method can be copied and pasted into any environment. And yeah, I made that stupid mistake. It took me a while before I could figure out that actually, finding out how to alleviate the pressure on engineers is just a continuous search. It's a continuous search that we need to go together through. So lately, since I've been collaborating with agile teams that are in the physical product domain, so in the world of hardware development, physical product development, I've been uncovering that, or we have been uncovering that there are some additional issues or struggles that this industry is going through. And I'd like to ask all of you some questions, because if what we've seen, correct me if I'm wrong, add that into the chat, or write the question onto the wall that Mohammed has shared earlier in the chat. But in the area of physical product development, over time, whenever you're creating a new device or a new machine, over time, you need different types of engineering disciplines. So all the way at the beginning, you might need people that have a very strong systems engineering background. And then eventually that product is sort of on a high level, it's sort of identified in a way, but then we need all kind of architects, or at least all kind of architects want to work on that product to sort of break down or design what needs to be created, what kind of modules you need, what kind of components you need. But then, because then the mechanical engineers and the reliability engineers and the electrical engineers, then they sort of understand what they need to build. The very waterfall-ish way of thinking, and therefore super risky to keep adopting this way of working. More than that, ordering physical products, let's say in-between products, is pretty expensive. So doing that over and over again typically means sending a design to a supplier. That supplier needs to mold it into a piece of metal, and then having to send that back. It takes some time, but it also takes quite a lot of money. And typically, you see that companies are not ready to invest in these in-between products. They want to have everything first time right. There's quite a sort of a paradigm shift required at that level. Hardware companies, as I mentioned, they do not always develop everything in-house, and therefore they collaborate with a lot of external suppliers typically. So that's another difficulty that they're going through. And what I've seen, but and again, please share your ideas. But in an environment where there is an engineering culture, there's typically a sort of there's a lot of pride there, which is good. But it also might mean that depending on the system and how people are sort of incentivized, pride can become ignorance, and having the ability to have people to sort of hide themselves behind some kind of a curtain, just to make sure that if anything goes wrong, it's nobody can point at fingers to them. So while I've been collaborating with teams that develop physical products, we've been trying to think about collectively what do we need to do in order to still have the ability to work agile and therefore alleviate the pressure on engineers, really be able to develop good stuff, learn together, and not to and to sort of slowly break down the silos that you typically find in a company that has already established an established physical product developer. We figured out that actually the let's say one of the biggest learnings is that the way we are communicating is essentially learning from what we now call Conway's Law. It's that the way we're communicating, or it's at least, the way that we are communicating is actually it's defining the way we are building our product. The way we are communicating, the way we're organized to communicate, is a sort of an influencer on how we are building our products. And therefore, if you read it slightly differently, it means that that's also where the opportunity lies. If we're creating a physical product, then we need to organize around that physical product so that we have the ability to develop that physical product. And that means that we need to be cross-discipline. But typically, whenever you create a big machine, then it's not enough to have 5 or 10 people being involved. Typically, a big machine, depending on the context, of course, it can easily require 300 or maybe 1,000 people. So are those 1,000 people? Is that going to be our team? Well, we've I think by now, most people that are in this call, you probably know that of course that's not the case. However, by looking at how we need to organize ourselves using Conway's Law, or at least the learnings from Conway's Law, we've sort of uncovered that by looking at the product that we're trying to create, and therefore using the product architecture, we can actually identify the various modules, and we can organize around those, meaning that each team has the ability to be cross-discipline and has the ability to deliver a module independently from one another. And collectively, so it's essentially this is sort of where value stream thinking comes into place. Collectively, we have the ability to deliver a form of value. So it's while let's say being part of these so-called long-term transformations, and I don't really like the term transformation because it implies that initially we were doing something, we were in some kind of a position, and then there was a transformation happening. I see Optimus Prime sort of shifting from being a firefighter to some kind of a big cool robot, and then being a big cool robot. A transformation is a continuously ongoing thing. Actually, a good and how do you call it? An agile enterprise, an agile company should be in transformation at all times, continuously be identifying what is the next best thing that we can do in order to deliver better value, to support our engineers so that they have a good time, so that they are learning, and so that they stay with us. So if I would have to boil down my learnings or what I've seen in the, let's say, the switch of waterfall physical product developers to agile in hardware teams, I think that these stable teams moving away from a project with half allocated people, moving away from that and going to stable teams is probably the best thing that can happen with hardware developers. Stable teams that sit together, that can learn to collaborate with each other, that can learn from each other, where we have mechanical developers and electronic engineers that typically didn't even speak each other's language, but now do, because they collaborate with each other on the creation of something of value, on the creation of a module, how small or how big that might be. It's tremendously valuable. So looking at what I've sort of our learnings, cross-discipline is let's say collaborating in cross-discipline way is tremendously valuable because there's a lot of learning there for the engineers that are in these teams. We've seen that if physical product development is expensive, you know what? How about we invest more in simulations? and trying to try to develop things that are easy to break down. And it's maybe it's me, but in an engineering environment, consultancy language is is a sort of it's a trigger for allergy. And so the so-called what I call mumbo jumbo or sort of agile or consultancy mumbo jumbo is typically not really approved or appreciated in these areas. So I've tried to reduce that, go back to the principles, and there's no way that agile and or any other agile method is it can help. So I mean, it can help easily. So I've been sort of exploring this environment for the last couple of years, and I've seen there are not a lot of people that are doing that or that are publishing in that. So it's for me sort of a reach out to all of you to let's start sharing some information because there are a lot of people that will be helped by doing this. So I'd like to end it right here because the discussion that we'll have in a bit, or the questions that we will go through in a bit, have even more value than me just producing some warm air via microphone into this Zoom call. So I'd like to invite you to write your type your thoughts into one of those post-its, and let's have that discussion in a bit. Thanks so much.
Wonderful, Ali. Thank you for that. Antonio, it's your turn. So without delay, go ahead.
No problem. I'm gonna put the timer, so like that it's going to be maximum 15 minutes. And sometimes I speak too fast, so we might even finish earlier than that. So what do they have, the oil and gas companies, as a characteristic? So usually they are really big. There are some oil and gas companies that they can actually say the sun is always shining in our company because they have offices or rigs around the world. So they always have the sun, right? So you have a lot of challenges with that. When they are so big, it means a lot of people, a lot of different portfolios, a lot of different business units, and lots of miscommunication or not communication. And that is usually on every big companies. So it happens as well on oil and gas companies. I had a chat with another agile coach on that oil and gas company that he has been working for that company more than 15 years on different portfolios, because the big companies, they usually do a lot of restructuration and changing people every 3-4 years. So there's a lot of people allocating to different parts of the business. And usually there is a lot of knowledge of a part of business that are lost. And he explained to me the first experiment on agile for that company, or at least the first one that he saw. I was in 2012. They were doing a program delivery, and they were using part of software, because when you are so big, it's not only about getting the oil out. You need to send it, packages, managing all the sales and everything. So even if you are an oil and gas company, you need to do a amount of software because you need it. So you need a lot of engineers, software engineers, oil engineers, a lot of different kind of knowledge, right? Of course, they have an application that it was really, really old, and the program, they think that's not going to work. So they say, okay, let's try this thing called Agile. Leadership, they didn't know what that means, but they say, well, we are already in a bad situation. Okay, let's go. It was the first time that actually someone say, it's in Spanish, we could say, de perdidos al río. We are already so lost that it doesn't matter. Okay, let's go. And that's really important to have that person that actually allows you to do that. And they managed to actually deliver value in a way. So they were surprised. And they say, okay, let's try to do the same everywhere on the portfolio without, of course, training. They didn't spend any training. So people were forced to actually use agile principles without understanding and without even having the choice. Of course, it didn't work, right? One of the key things is when you've been told from above what to do, you don't feel empowered until you keep doing the same mistakes. So that it was one of the issues. But then he moved to a different part of the business, and it was actually a freshly new product with freshly new technology. And they have actually autonomy over the code and over the releases. No more release every 3 months. That was a huge change for them. When you are allowed only to do a release every 3 months, they fail fast to learn that doesn't happen because it's not fast and you cannot fail. So it was a big change, and they managed to actually do a lot because they have some conditions that were really good for that team. They were all nearly collocated, or at least on the same time zone. That is one of the key things. They have autonomy and empowerment about the code, the technology used, and they could decide what to do. It was alignment between business and the product and the development team. They all understand the purpose. You know, with the purpose, a lot of people think that it's a little bit of blah, blah, fluffy consultant word, right? But one of the things I work for, even the purpose, it was really boring, but they understood why it was important to do that program for regulatory concerns and to ensure that the company wasn't losing money. They understood since the beginning the purpose, and they managed to deliver it because someone in the business actually explained to them what was the reason and the purpose of this team in order to do that. So that is the big change. On oil and gas companies, probably they would need some help from Felipe when it's part of the construction of the rigs. But you have some constraint as well, that sometimes you don't own the land where you are constructing. You're going to have at least 10 years with one country. And of course, you need to do it in a way that you're going to get money and that country as well, because otherwise they couldn't allow you to make a rig there, right? Or you have a bid war because a lot of different oil and gas companies, because of course that country is going to, okay, you give me those millions every month. The other company is giving 1.2 more. So they cannot do a little bit fail fast in some areas. They have improved a lot, those calculations, actually applying Agile and using new technologies like AI to simulate a lot of things on the rigs, right? Key issues with Agile on oil and gas companies, scaling. Sometimes it works really well for small teams, but then instead of letting that way of working to scale organically, they force it everywhere. And that had happened in banking companies that I worked in the past, in travel companies that I worked in the past. They have a model, you know, this business unit is doing really well with their agile ways of working. I don't understand what it is, but let's copy that. Let's make that the standard. And when you use a standard to force in, you're making Agile not to be Agile, right? When you are forcing people to follow the way of working that you're telling them and not allowing them to improve their ways of working, you are really anti-Agile. And that's one of the key things. Sometimes it's really complicated, the trade-off between scale and the speed of a scale, right? Of course, management, they want to, okay, yeah, everybody doing the same because I want to look good. You know, in 2 or 3 years, it's going to be a restructure of the company. And if I saw good numbers, I'm going from tier 4 to tier 3 leadership, right? Or I'm going to go to a different company because I can show that. And that happened in banking, in travel. Most of the time in those industries, there is a lot of people rotating every 3 years, company, on management. And they're only worried about the short-term investment. And we arrive to finance here. Often people ask me, Antonio, what's the real showstopper to spread agility in companies? And my experience, in a lot of different companies, the real showstopper is not mentalities or leadership is how finance works. If they are usually doing business cases with CapEx, OpEx, you need to convince someone on finance to allow to do things differently, because otherwise that person is going to say no, and it doesn't matter that everybody else is saying yes. Finance is saying no. You are not going to be allowed to do that change because it's the way that they work. Oil and gas companies, they are usually all have a lot of years. They are not new companies. When it was the last time that you hear about a new oil and gas company? I think I haven't heard a new one since I was born. And I'm a little bit older than Felipe, 43 only, not too much. So they are so used to operate financially in a way that they don't want to change because they don't understand. It's always a challenge that. It's always one of the fights that I try to get on every company. Without success on oil and gas for the moment, I managed to apply it properly on travel to actually using a Scrum. You can tell them every month, using the story points of everything that it was delivered, they can calculate the money spent per story point. So they can actually calculate the CapEx, the capital expenditure that month, and the operation expenditure. But of course, travel companies, they might be big, but they're not as big as oil and gas companies. One of the key things always for me is transparency and visibility. So I do prepare a lot of different dashboards, not for management, it's for everybody, to show what the teams are working. What's the problem with oil and gas? And probably with other companies, some areas are really, really not open to everybody. Because when you are about to make a bid for a new rig, you don't want everybody in the company to know your simulations because it's sensitive information. So even if you're trying to spread the transparency, a lot of projects with the data that everybody can see, they can see if the business is aligned with the developers, if what's important for the business is actually the development team is working on that. You cannot do that on some part of the business. And that misalignment, it's always a point of friction. The good thing is, more and more, Agile is something common from leadership. In a lot of companies, the new leaders, they are same age as Felipe and myself, or maximum around 50s now. The new leaderships that are coming, they know Agile and they know why it's important. And in some companies, in oil and gas, some of them, they're already trying to change because we're on a moment that is really complicated for oil and gas companies because we are really, really worried about the carbon emissions, right? And if you are producing oil, probably it's really complicated. So they are trying to change the way that they work, and they want to make it in a way that Agile ways of working are spreading. So if you have leadership from the top that at least they know about Agile, it's going to help. However, there is a long line between leadership on top and the rest of the teams. And sometimes it's not enough that the leadership, the tier 1, tier 2, they really like Agile and they want everything to be on Agile. And also the people on the bottom, all the people in the middle and finance, those are the ones that you have to convince. The key thing sometimes is a lot of simulation, a lot of, you need to provide numbers in a way that it's going to be easy to understand for everybody to make the decisions. I can feel now that the industry is changing. For me, it's not the same when I arrived to the industry 2 years ago and all the same answers from people because I ask a lot of questions. When I arrive, I talk to everybody. I need to understand what's their day-to-day, what could be that. And I can see a difference 2 years after. And I have hope that that's going to change, but they are really, really big. Ideally, they would start changing the technology that they use so they have more freedom to actually have releases more often. So for other industries, when I told them that I managed to get with teams that they're able to release at the end of the sprint, they say, oh, but you should aim for one, at least release every time that you finish something. Yeah. Before that, it was one sprint. It was every 2 months or 3 months, or whenever someone was saying, okay, well, I'm going to prepare a release. So oil and gas industry is changing. It's getting ready for Agile. We are still far from it, but I hope we'll get there. There is a lot of issues that we have in other industries. I'm pretty sure that some of the issues that Felipe got in construction or Ali on hardware, they're similar than the ones that I was explaining. So it's going to be an interesting panel discussion, I think. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Antonio. So good points, everybody. I can see some of the questions already posted on the board so far. If you guys still have some questions, please post them there. We'll come to that in a bit. I just want to spend some about 15-20 minutes in panel discussion since we are done a bit earlier. I do have some questions. So I will just ask this question to each of the panel members one by one, if you guys could answer. How important it is to actually use Agile in your kind of benefits you think can be achieved compared to the traditional waterfall approach? Because general perception about construction, oil and gas, or hardware is, okay, hardware we know lean, but general perception is it's kind of a linear industry where most of the things are done in waterfall, like they are planned in advance and then they are done as per the plan. So how important do you think currently is to go for Agile in your industry, and what benefits you can take out of it? Whoever wants to go first.
It looks like Ollie's got it. Take it, Ollie.
Oh yes, of course. And then after me, it's gonna be you, Felipe.
All right.
No, so excellent question. So, whenever I think about, no, let me state this differently. I know that I'm a little bit biased. I am a little bit biased because I have seen Agile be way more effective. Sorry for the exaggeration. I had to be more exaggerated. I need to exaggerate a little more than that. Way more effective than the traditional way of working, the so-called waterfall approach. Even though there many waterfall projects worked fine. The effect of let's say the effect of a traditional approach, like a traditional waterfall approach, is, and I should state that differently. I'm sorry for that. The larger a project is, the more risk it will carry. So we need to prove that any in-between moment or any in-between step, we have the ability to reduce risk, to show that we've interpreted the request correctly, that we're actually solving the right problem. The longer we wait with that exposure, the longer we wait with trying to find that out, the bigger the risk is that after 2 months, 6 months, 2 years, we're uncovering that the product that we've created, that we've spent so many millions on, is the wrong one, or it cannot be developed, or it's going to be exponentially more expensive than initially thought. So the earlier we have the ability to reduce that risk, the better.
Yeah, I want to pile onto that. If you imagine before, I'm going to do the nice contrast. Thank you, Ali. That was perfect. The contrast, when I came into the industry, like Antonio, we're almost like hermanos, we're brothers. You used to be able to build $100 million project with 16 contracts. So that's like electrical trades, plumbing, structure, interior finishes, 16. Back, that was 20 years ago. Today, the same building of $100 million size, say it's a 5-story building, you now have 54 to 65, sometimes 70 subcontracts because specialization and complexity have exponentially increased. You can no longer deliver the same thing with generalist people. People are way more specialized now. And in our construction industry across the whole United States since the 2000s, they've done research again, and 3 out of 4 projects are late, and 3 out of 4 projects are over budget. And I'm sure in hardware and oil and gas, it's the same. And you have to think about that. Like, if everything's finishing late and more expensive, we're not dealing with the risk correctly, like Ali said. Now, when you take that agile mindset and you're thinking about the customer first right away, there are some methods and frameworks to help you pull from the customer what's valuable to them. But outside of that, in traditional project management, a project charter doesn't get it done. And I'm a PMP myself, project management professional, and I know what that is. That doesn't get it done like some of the other things. So if it did get it done, and PMI has been in existence since the 70s, we'd see it. It's not happening. I'm sorry, PMI, I love you. I maintain my credential, so don't hate me, Georgetown. But it's not enough. The complexity has run away, and the traditional ways of handling that just don't work because you're in a complex environment. So agile for me is the only way, and I'm super biased like Ali. I am psycho biased on that. I can't be I tell people too. And I say, Scrum isn't for everybody. If you like being late, in trouble, and behind schedule and working a lot for no extra benefit, then don't try it.
Yeah, I think in terms of benefits, one of the things that it was happening in a lot of industries without Agile is they didn't stop project that they were going to fail anyway. It's like they knew that they were going to fail, but they never stopped them, because they didn't tell the sponsors, and it's like the emperor's clothes. Everybody knew that the emperor was without clothes, but no one was saying it. If you follow Agile principles and you can see how is it going, you can predict that actually you are completely nude. Do you want to keep being nude the rest and lose money, or you want to actually pivot and actually buy some clothes? And that's what it's allowing on every industry, also in oil and gas. So that's the difference for me. It's realizing when you can actually stop things and change priorities. Before it was, this is what we think that is the best, we continue doing. And then you fail and you lose a lot of money. And on these companies, we're not talking about just 1 million or 2. It's usually the loss of money is with a lot of digits. So for me, that's a major benefit that you can explain to leadership as well.
Thank you. One more question. Sorry, I'm also an agile person, but I'm trying to ask the questions which I usually face a lot from the people. So one of the questions which I usually get is like, how can you, when we talk about agile implementation, we talk about meeting the requirements at a lesser cost and way more better efficiency and managing the resources well. But one of the questions which I'm asked a lot is, how can you ensure that you will be able to meet the budget or do efficiently when you don't log the requirements? That's a big misconception in this part of the world. How do you answer this question then? Like in Agile, you don't predefine the requirements and you just leave it to the customer's choice, and then you adapt from there. Doesn't it mean that you will actually you will have cost overruns?
Yes, it does. You can set up some safe to fail experiments or prototypes or discussions when you're dealing with customers, especially, conversations are almost free. And when you're in requirements, some people in other industries, and I hear this a lot from people in information technology, this requirements gathering is like a love affair. It's like going on a date and then dating for a long time, and then you're on the first date, second date, third date, and the next thing you know, you've been dating for 6 months and you haven't even decided if you're just going to be exclusive. So don't do that. See if you can't set up some safe to fail and get some feedback. If you're already in an industry, it's not brand new and you're delivering something now, you have existing customers that you can talk to and get information, and you can take those learnings to the new thing you're trying to do or to improve what you're already doing. So that's my answer for that. Don't go on a 6-month dating experience, because then you're going to do like what Ali said, and you go too far, or like Antonio said, you're naked and you're failing, and nobody pulls the plug because they're too committed.
Yeah, and then after 6 months, you're figuring out that actually you've been dating a total psycho. One of the learnings that I had a while back was from a program that was initiated at General Electric. The program was called FastWorks. Program FastWorks. It has been initiated already quite a long time back, which started with a book that has been presented, or at least a book, which was The Lean Startup from Eric Ries, was I think published somewhere in 2010, 2011. And I think like a year later or something like that, General Electric sort of pulled them in and was like, Eric, you need to explain to us how we are going to use that, because we need that. Why? Because within General Electric, there were huge issues, at least in the environment where Eric Ries was pulled in. I think that was the environment where aircraft engines were developed. And the struggle there was everyone was indeed going on Tinder dates for 6 months, like Felipe mentioned, writing requirements until there was no paper anymore. And those projects, they took endless amount of time. And then only after a huge investment and also an investment in time, the company figured out that whatever they were creating was not going to be bought. It's not what the customer wanted. It's not what the initial idea was. So the program FastWorks, sort of its prime objective, and I'm paraphrasing here a little bit, its prime objective was to actively stop projects. And I found that fantastic. Which means, sure, there are quite a lot of people that still love that, going on the first date, second date, third date of, getting requirements and writing down even better requirements and coming back and, specifying some more requirements. But simultaneously, you have a different section of the company that is actively testing out whether those requirements are going to deliver value by developing proof of concept, by going actually to customers and saying, you know what, using the requirements that we already have at this moment, this is what we're probably going to design. What do you think? Is this going to fit? Is this going to be bought? It's probably, using our simulations for our financial models, it's probably going to cost this much. If we're done, are you going to buy it? And for, what was it? I think it was 2/3. On the website of General Electric, there's a lot of information to be found about Program FastWorks, but about 2/3 of the projects that they did over there were, in my words, useless. Or at least they were not up to par. The initial promise of fantastic, astronomical returns on investment, it's not going to happen. It didn't happen. So about 2/3 of the projects were actively stopped way ahead of time. Found that fantastic. And how do you do that? By actively involving the customer or potential customers if you don't have them yet. I found that fantastic. So requirements or not, if you don't have, if you're gathering the requirements, which is, fine. There are some people that really passionate about writing down requirements in the most, it's like writing law almost. It's an art almost. But simultaneously, you need to test them, and the outcome can be pretty tough to handle.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the key things for me. It's you always need to think that whatever you do, even if it's the most amazing product in the world that is beautiful, if no one is using it, you just fail and you just lost money. The key thing about getting in contact with the customer or potential customers is you can actually know what they want. When I was working on travel, I remember once that for a company that they hired boats, and they were thinking that the experienced sailors, they would prefer to look for a specific type of boat, and then the destination, that the destination wasn't actually what they wanted. Luckily for them, they did a user research a week before starting everything else. And every one of the experienced sailors, they say, oh no, I'm gonna look first for the destination. And once I know the destination and I like it, then I will check what are the different boats that I can hire. But if they don't have the big boat that I want, it's not a problem because I want that destination and one of the boats. So they save a lot of money. And they were really happy that actually the users proved them wrong. It only spent 1 week instead of months of development. And it's the same. That is one of the keys of Agile, is focus on your customer. It's not about you. It's about your customer. You are doing things for them, not for you.
Perfect. So thank you for all the answers. Very good points. Let's just switch over to the board and see the questions which people have posted, so we can start answering those. I believe you guys can see my screen now. I will just sort them. Those who haven't posted, sorry, those who haven't posted the question, you still can post the question. If you think any question is already posted by someone else, instead of duplicating it, just like it, so we have a like count. We have quite a few questions for Felipe. So let's just start with these general questions. I'll add a column for done. So the first question is, I will just read the question out, and whoever wants to answer this can go ahead. I recently pulled the plug from a very large organization that let pride got in the way and impeded business agility. Uh, Leadership said they want agile, but they won't allow agile leadership lead the way. I felt I was fighting a losing battle and a waste of my time, so I left. Do you think I gave up too soon? What would you have done in this situation?
I'll start first. Farouk, I think it depends on you. If you like to fight and stay to make leadership upset, then you should have stayed. But if you're realizing that time is a precious resource and you only have so much of it, you made the right move to leave. It depends on if you like to fight every day. Some people do.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. So basically, it's up to you to decide. You are the one in the organization. You know how things are there. If you think you have done enough, fair enough. You tried your best. If you feel it's time to move on, it's your call. It's you who needs to decide when is a good time to call it a day. Okay, so next question is, any other agile framework apart from Scrum or Lean that can be used in a non-IT project?
Just real quick, Lean is not a framework, just so people understand.
Oh, how about Spotify?
Yeah, Spotify, that's a good one. Kanban.
No.
Oh, no, Spotify has an adapted Scrum framework, Ali. They wrote a book about it. It must be real.
There's a YouTube video as well.
Just to make sure it's the Spotify before they went public. Everything since they've become public is not the same Spotify.
And now they're not actually following what they publish anyway. So
Exactly.
No, so there's the thing is to answer the question. There are a lot of methods out there, and methods are fine, or frameworks. Let me call them that. Better terminology. There are a lot of frameworks out there, but in the end, and trust me, I'm someone that is I'm giving a lot of safe trainings. I'm even I'm the world's youngest SPCT. You can use any framework that you want, but the moment that you don't have the basics correct, the moment that the small agile teams that typically use Scrum, if that's not in order, then it doesn't matter what kind of framework you use on top of that. I think if I would quote Simon Reindl, he's a PST, professional Scrum trainer. The first agile training that I followed from Simon, I think he mentioned the rule 1 of scaling is don't.
Yeah,
Don't.
Craig Larman,
So-
but it's also advising the same. And the creator of Less, he's saying, don't, unless you are forced to, but don't.
Yeah. So, if it really hurts to continue to develop or continue to work in the traditional way of working, if it really hurts, then you need to identify and search collectively what you need to do in order to work more agile. And it up until now, I think I've seen that Scrum is the easiest way to adapt or to adopt to start with, even though doing it is extremely hard. Really, really doing it the correct way is extremely hard. So, yeah, other frameworks just use other terminology.
And sometimes it's you will find, depending on the context, that you can adapt and to do your own framework and getting what is good from other frameworks depending on your context. Because sometimes you may have some areas of safe, like product increments every 3 months, and do that planning, the product increment and planning, that is good, but then everything else is following other, or you have some teams following Scrum, others Kanban, others just pure XP. It doesn't matter, and it's alignment all together, and the context is key.
Get the basics in order and go then one step ahead.
Yes, and one more thing, I was reading Agile, one of the Agile service, annual service. It says about 86 of the projects are using Scrum in one way or another. Either they are pure Scrum or they are mixed, so hybrid of Scrum or with something else. So Scrum is the most widely used framework. You can always inspect and adapt and self-organize there. What suits you best. Moving on to the next question, I will start with. So I will take one question each for each of the speakers, and then
Thank you, Jerry.
going round robin and see how many we can answer. The first question for Felipe is excited to understand how you run your Scrum ceremonies with an understanding or assumption that you are working with possibly hundreds of people in your team, typically of a construction team. Typical of a construction team. Did you follow Scrum by the book or you had to improvise? Do you use any scaling framework, for example?
Yes. So by the book is this book, the red book. So if people are asking like that, by the book, this is Jeff's book. This is how I started. The art of doing twice the work in half the time. And Jeff appreciates that I do this, but he doesn't give me any money for it. It's just because I love it. And then the other book is This is Lean. And This is Lean is a book that was published by the Lean Construction Institute, and it's about balancing resource efficiency with flow. So those two together is what I used. Even though a construction project can have hundreds of people, sometimes thousands, you don't stand up 100 people in a stand-up. You don't have 100 people moving sticky notes across a Kanban board or a Scrum board. That's not how I started, and that's not. You don't go to a construction project and you're like, well, it's not Scrum if you don't see 1,000 people in the ceremonies. You find teams that are interrelated where it makes sense, like the project management team, for example. On my project, I ran a team. We use the Scrum Framework. We have many projects now. 2 weeks ago, I randomly went to a team, and they were using Scrum just for meetings. So they would just take parts of the meeting with the client, and they were using the framework with the client. So the customer is actually on the Scrum team, which is awesome. It's not always the case. And they're using it to help them work through just impediments and constraints that stop the process of construction. Some trade people have come to Scrum trainings and they're now saying that, Felipe, I use this with my crew. So I've had an electrician foreman who guides a crew of electricians say, I'm now using this with my electricians. So I'm the Scrum Master and the product owner. And so there are many examples of that.
Okay, so the next question is for Ali. Is hardware development how much cross? So in hardware development, how much cross-functional functionality of the team have you found to be most useful?
So let's start with a little bit of context. Whenever you look at the software team, we typically talk about an analyst, a software developer, and a tester, or maybe even someone that does some additional, I don't know, quality stuff. In a way, that you have a cross-discipline or a multifunctional team right there, if they collectively have the ability to deliver anything of value. In typical hardware development environment, all of those roles, all of those disciplines are sort of reduced or maybe even packaged into one, which is software. Because next to that, you have mechanical development. Next to that, you have electronic development. But if you would zoom into each of these these engineering disciplines, then within electronic development, you have board engineers, you have reliability engineers, you have high power engineers, and so forth and so forth. So the whole idea of the definition of a multifunctional team is weird, because in a way, typically most teams are multifunctional in a way. So going back, so now stepping back again, going more to the question. The whole point is that we need to first understand what the team does. Because if you want to have a team that can deliver anything of value, then that team needs to have the ability to own whatever they create. And therefore, if they're creating a module, then obviously you need to have the people involved in order to create that module. And that could be, depending on the context, it could be a mechanical engineer, it could be some software or firmware developers, and it could be some validation and verification engineers, depending on the context.
Okay, thank you. So, Antonio, nobody liked any questions, so I will just pick the first one from top to bottom. If you cannot enforce people to use Agile, then what if people don't want to use Agile? People are usually resistant to change. By the way, these kind of general questions, if anybody else want to add anything, you're welcome. Antonio, you are the one
Yeah,
who was
so in all the industries that I have worked, most of the time you try to find one team that is willing to do things differently. And that would help a lot. I will always try to avoid enforcing people to follow Agile. If it's management that they wanted to go to teams to change the way of working, instead of trying to force them to follow a framework, I start just having workshop with them and asking, what are your biggest challenges right now? What are the things that are stopping you to actually deliver the things that make you unhappy while you work? And with all of those, you can find some reasons to start applying a small amount of agile mindset and changing little by little. So you don't have to do a big bang change. Usually that's going to be really, really bad. But if you find a way that they can tell you what are their challenges and the things that they cannot do, or they're making them unhappy, maybe there is a way to make them a little bit happier following some part of the agile mindset or some part of a framework, and then explaining a little bit more step by step. It's every increment, if it's a tiny one, it's good enough.
Okay, back to Felipe. Can we implement Scrum on everything in a construction project, or we have to identify areas where Scrum can be used and leave the rest as plan-based project?
Yeah, it depends on you. So if you're the one that's going to do it, and if you got buy-in with your team, you can do it on everything. We have some people that use it, the whole team uses it. And I'll give an example. You can take off one of the next questions below about a construction example. There's a team of 5 people in the middle of the United States, and they've got they're working on a large project, so they're using Scrum to organize themselves, and then the owner has come to them with other requests for other projects, other smaller projects outside of the main project they're using. And typically that team would have to add more people to do those other smaller projects. So they're working, let's say it's a $100 million project, and the owner's giving them these $2 to $5 million projects on different parts of the campus. That team was able to stay with just the 5, using Scrum, do the big job, keep the same 5 people, and handle up to 4 to 5 other $2 to $5 million projects without adding anybody, without working nights and weekends, without burning anybody out, without making anybody upset, and with delighting the client. The client was delighted. So that's one example. And I'll give one more example of that second question. Then you can pull 2 cards off. In the pre-construction, they're estimating teams. There's one team in particular that's right near and dear here to where I live in California. They've been using the Scrum Framework for 4 years. They outperform teams of a similar size 3 to 1. So they're 3 times more effective, and they use it for all the things that they do in pre-construction. And those of you in the construction industry know what that is. So there you go. 2 questions, 1 answer.
So the first one is the one you answered, or which one?
Oh, the one that you're hovering over, I have not answered yet.
Okay.
Looks like you moved it.
Yeah, the one I asked before I moved it. Okay. Ali, for you, as I'm new to Agile and Scrum, could you explain a little bit about SAFe versus Scrum in hardware development?
Yes. Scrum is the basics. SAFe is the basics with a little bit of extra. It's a language to me. If I would explain it, SAFe tries to give a language for organizing a lot of Scrum teams. And sometimes when big organizations would like to use Scrum on a larger scale, there are a lot of approaches, and there are a lot of approaches to do that. How do you call it? To have a vocabulary, and SAFe is one of them.
Antonio, for you, how can we apply the Scrum concept of MVP in an oil and gas project?
Well, when they need to do a new field of rigs, they don't put all the holes at the same time, right? They do one, and then another, and then another. So in that case, the MVP is bigger than you could expect, but at least they're not doing everything on a big bang. And on every other part of the business, on oil and gas, they have also mobile apps, a lot of sales applications to sell the oil. They also do now a small amount, and then the others. They don't try to do, this is our new applications to where you can buy oil for your gas station. No, they do small at a time now. It's the same. Sometimes the MVP is going to be bigger than you would expect, but it's the context.
Okay. Felipe, back to you. What are some of the biggest challenges in implementing Scrum or Agile in construction?
There's only one challenge that I recognize, and it's awareness. People just don't know what it is. And some people that are doing fake Agile and fake Scrum, they're out there, they heard, it's like telephone game. They heard from a friend that heard from a friend that heard from a friend. They watched a YouTube video, and then they try doing it and it doesn't work. And they're like, this stuff is just garbage. So the source information is free. I recommend you read the Scrum at Scale guide. It's only 12 pages. I'm going to drop some stuff in the chat to help answer that question as well. There's a couple of resources here. The first one, if you want to earn a Scrum Master certification, you don't have to get certified to be a Scrum Master, by the way. That's totally unnecessary. It's not necessary or required. But if you want to learn with other people from the source, there's a class coming up in March. If you want to learn more about examples and conversations like we're having here, check out that podcast. Shameless plug. Here's the shameless plug, Jamil, because that was an easy question on awareness. So you get bonus. Here's the bonus. And then finally, if you want to learn more about how to implement lean construction, the final link is Lean Construction Institute's Introduction to Lean Construction that I'll be presenting for our St. Louis Community of Practice. The link is there if you want to learn how to do that more. So enjoy.
Thank you.
Yeah, I saw that short answer question, Ali, and I had to hit it.
Perfect.
Good.
Okay, Ali, for you, the next question is there is another example of, I think, okay, there is another example of American F-35, which was failed project and was done in Agile. What's your take on some hardware Agile projects that failed miserably? Okay, there is a comment on this
Well,
as well. Okay,
oh yeah,
somebody has posted that comment. I don't know if it was you or someone else.
no, it's someone else. But just to reflect on the project of Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin is a huge defense contractor in the U.S. And there's a lot that has been written about the F-35, or what we call over here, it's called the Joint Strike Fighter, something like that, a jet fighter that was sort of almost famously over budget. But I don't really have information about what happened over there. What I would think is a company like Lockheed Martin is a defense contractor. It's a really big company, has been existing for a very long time, and is working with the government. And I think this was 2 years back. Correct me if I'm wrong, Felipe. I think you know this a little bit more. The Department of Defense in the US started to almost demand that the projects that are being done for them, or at least the projects that they pay for, need to be done using iterative approaches or iterative and incremental deliveries or something like that, right?
Yeah, they say everything except the word agile.
Yeah,
But they define it without saying it. Yep.
But yeah, this project has been, I mean, these kind of projects are huge. And I think that this is one of those projects that was just done in a way where a lot of risk has been sort of pushed forward. Or at least that's what you typically see in these very large, very heavy projects. Risks are being pushed forward. You know, we're not going to face them right now, and because it's either expensive or it's bad for ego. Because you know, if you're a large company, you have an image to uphold. So it's, you know, typically these large projects are just there's a limited transparency inside. Tricky. So why do they typically fail? Well, because there are no in between moments where the project feasibility has been, let's say, critically tested.
One thing though, I don't know who asked this question, but I also read about F-35 a while back, and the one thing I know about this, there were too many clients or too many stakeholders who were giving the requirements. Like it was a joint fighter for a lot of countries. I think NATO countries and European countries were involved. So maybe that could be one of the reasons. I don't know. This is one thing which I read somewhere about it. Anyways, Antonio, for you, the next question is: what if the leadership is not aware about Agile or does not have sufficient knowledge? How do you educate them, as this sometimes becomes very challenging?
Well, for me, one of the key things if I'm working with a team, then to ensure that everything is transparent, that everybody can see what they are working on, and they can see the results. So even if leadership is there not aware about Agile, and they only know that we're changing the way of working of one of the teams, they can see exactly everything that the team is working, everything that hopefully is aligned with their priorities, and they can see actually everything that they are delivering. So they can see a positive change there, and they can see also that they can shift priorities, and the team will continue. Sometimes it's the transparency and visibility of what the teams are doing is going to be enough for leadership to realize the positive change.
Okay, thank you. I got a call in between. So, Felipe, the next question is most important in hearing how to get trades or specialists to work collaboratively together. I don't know if this is a question or this is just a comment.
Okay, so I'll answer one approach that I use is I think about the Scrum Framework. So if you just look at this picture that I'm sharing here, so in this framework, it all starts with making the invisible visible in the backlog and in sprint planning. So the two first steps, in there. So what the magic in that is that you understand the different organizations. So if it's trade partner architect, let's just pick architect for a second. If you want to collaborate more with them, you have to understand how they operate as a business. So curiosity is going to be your best friend. Bring your curiosity. If you don't currently understand how each of those different silos works, how they make money, how they measure success, then it's going to be hard for you to effectively collaborate. So get curious about how they work and then bring that with you. So I understand each one of those companies by working with people directly and seeing like, how do they measure success? Like what makes their boss excited about what they're doing and their company? What do they, brag about? What's important to them? When you understand that, collaboration just gets easier.
Yeah, and in the book that Felipe shared earlier, the book from Jeff Sutherland about the art of doing twice the work in half the time. In that book, there is a section in which he's explaining an example actually that happened of a colleague of mine that redid his kitchen, or I think it was part of his house, like it did a home makeover. There's a whole chapter about that. Ilko Rustenburg. And
yeah, it is a small country, Ali.
It is a small country, yeah. Yeah. He's a partner at the firm that I work for.
That's awesome.
So he had to do a home makeover, and I'm going through one, and I'm not sure whether any one of you has been through a home makeover. They are typically terrible. Things are late, and you need to chase people, and it's terrible. Anyway, but Ilko decided to do this in a Scrum way. So he had like a sort of a small, how do you call those things that you could put like a mini, it's not disposable house, but the house on wheels. How do you call those things?
A trailer.
A trailer. Yeah, a trailer. You put that into his garden, and it had a Scrum board. It had all kind of activities that had to be done, and every morning, the people that were there, so that could be someone from plumbing, that could be an electrician, that could be someone that made the drywall. They were invited to join the daily stand-up or the daily Scrum, and to basically state what they're going to do the upcoming date in order to be ready. According to the contract, be ready at the end of the week. I think they had 1 week iterations. Mm-hmm. Be ready at the end of the week with whatever they were doing, and it generated mutual understanding. Typically, the electrician is like, you know what? I don't care as long as if the walls are open, I can do my job, and I'll just do my job, and then I'll move away. So, and whoever is going to do the rest, yeah, I don't care. Generalizing a little bit here. But essentially, Ilko did that before. That didn't work. So he was like, I'm going to pick this up the Scrum way. And it's really nicely written or described in that book.
Thank you for sharing that, Ali. So the next question is for you again. Is it really a good idea to have cross-functional or multidisciplinary teams in hardware where it's generally believed to have specialized teams in each discipline?
Yeah, again, it's really depending on the local context. It's depending on what they make. There's an article that has been presented or has been published, I think a month ago on the Harvard Business Review, talking about how Apple is enforcing innovation or sort of embedding innovation in the company. And they actively, or they specifically talk about the fact that they are using sort of monodisciplinary team. So that means that you have a team that does just firmware, and you have another team that is doing just housing, so designing of any types of assemblies. So that the housing of for instance, the camera module, that is sort of the element that is inside an iPhone. But they specifically chose to do that. So it's depending on the context. So what kind of, let's say, module can they deliver? independently from other teams, and therefore have the ability to independently from other teams identify whether they are delivering something that is integratable, that is performing, that is what customers want. So it's really depending on the context. And that means that if you're a part of the team that is developing the camera module, it could be that you have let's say engineers in your team that are specialized in optics, in how light goes through glass. It could be that you have in that same team you have electrical engineers that are let's say including or designing the board that contains the camera sensor and is testing that. So you have multiple disciplines in one team. So it's really highly dependent on the let's say the scope, the end-to-end responsibility of that team.
Okay. Antonio, the next question is, how can you fight the stuck mindset and the productive behavior of the leadership while their incentive is based on being intransparent?
I think that depending on the level of leadership, but I always believe that the best way is to lead by example. So if you are completely transparent with what you're doing, what the team you're working on is doing, that everybody can actually see it, it's going to make the change happen. So when we were allowed to work in offices, I always wanted to ensure that we have a big TV with a board that the team was working on, that the stand-ups, if someone wanted, could attend. And now when we have demos, we saw this is the demo for this team. Anyone who wants to attend from the company can do it. So you post on Yammer, and you have maybe some people from a different part of the business and see it. I think that leading by example is the best way to show that it's good to be transparent. It's going to avoid bad surprises for everybody. So it's good, right?
Right.
Okay. So this one is answered. Sorry, Felipe. The next question is: construction projects are considered as linear projects, where everything is planned in advance and then done as per the plan. I think we discussed this already, right? Or if
Right.
you want to share anything.
Yeah, so that's exactly the definition of waterfall. And so to implement that in an agile way, even though you have the plan, if you actually follow a construction project team, you will realize very quickly that people don't actually follow that plan. So welcome to the reality. So that's why I recommend doing other things, because just go and see it. Like Antonio just said, transparency is key. And if you actually follow it, don't listen to what people say, look at what people do.
Okay, so the next question is for Ali. Can Agile be implemented to all hardware projects? How important it is to decide which project should be done using Agile or Waterfall?
Well, isn't this a question that you can ask for any project? Because if the environment in which you're working has projects or products that you deliver that are very much subjective to change, that are highly volatile, then a very linear approach, with a big design up front, it's tricky, it's risky. It's just risky, and therefore an alternative approach that works with let's say that works in an iterative way, where we're actively search for the right way, that we're trying to identify whether something works, that we're trying to identify whether the requirements or the specs that have been written down are the correct ones. Yeah, then you need to find another way of working. And then Agile has proven itself already for decades now. The way of thinking has proven itself for decades now. So I don't think there is any discussion necessary for that.
Okay. Right. So Antonio, for you, the last question is: which Agile framework did you use in your company or oil and gas industry?
So it depends on the business unit. At a team level, most of them, they are following Scrum. Some of them are following Kanban, and some of them a little bit of a mix because it worked for them. But then at the program level, some programs are following parts of SAFe with the PI plannings or wave plannings. Other programs are not following that, and we are trying to change that because it's more complicated to predict when you can have things or what to do next or the priorities. But that's more or less it.
Okay. So I think somebody is posting more questions. Okay.
That's agile.
Yeah.
Philippe.
Okay. So Felipe, how lean helps reduce waste or increase productivity in construction? Can you give an example?
Sure. There's a 4-person team building administrative offices for a hospital. It's call it a $20 million project. I'm rounding, so don't get me. It's a $20 million project, 2-story building, just offices. There's a hospital behind it. And that team started using lean principles for planning because waterfall wasn't working. They weren't making up time on the schedule. They were actually behind schedule. They used this idea of pull system, like Scrum is a pull system, pull framework. And then the team, they had success with that. And they said that for the first time ever, they had time to think about things. And they said, what else can we do? So they started doing Scrum as a team. So to show you how powerful Lean and Scrum together are, and they do work well together, they're best friends. Lean was first, then Scrum came later. Thank you, Jeff. The project manager and the superintendent who actually run all the on-site stuff were able to leave the project 3 months earlier and let the junior team members finish the project. It sailed in ahead of schedule by over a month faster, and their profitability increased by 3%. And the project manager and the superintendent said it was Lean and Scrum together that allowed us to make that transformation. Before we did that, we were going to be late and we were going to finish over budget. And now every trade partner has come back and said this was the best job we've ever been a part of. It was the cleanest job we've ever been a part of. And please tell the other people in your company to run their jobs this way because this is the best way.
Okay. I hope that answers the question. The next question for Ali is, how do you deal with costing, budget, and deadlines using Agile in an industry known for 100% upfront planning? How do your stakeholders react to that?
I'm going to copy and paste Felipe's answer right here.
I think we have answered this kind of in another question earlier.
Yeah, no,
you,
but I do want to. Yeah, no problem. Because I do want to elaborate on this, because weren't all projects initially 100% upfront planning? All of them initially software, any form of construction, any form of high-tech product design. It was always 100% upfront planning. Whether you had marketing teams that upfront had like huge campaign designs, and then all of a sudden, whenever the campaign had to go live, they forgot that there's a lot of documentation that still needs to be done. The radio commercial is not ready yet. Oh my God! And it's not exactly what we asked for, and so forth and so forth. The same applies in any type of project. So whenever we talk about for instance, projects that are part of a tender process, tendering. Let's say projects that are part of a tender process, they're typically fixed time, fixed scope, and fixed price. Typically, right? Typically.
Right.
However, still, even in that type of project, you need to be able to prove that you are on the right track, prove that you understand the specs. And how do you do that? That's, as Felipe mentioned, you pull in, based on the capacity that you have, you pull in some part of the work, some part of the specification, and then you're trying to identify whether it's going to deliver value or not by actually building it or designing it and then validating that with the customer. Because otherwise, early on, you get the, I don't know how to call it, but you get the understanding that you are on the right track, so you just continue doing your work without validating whether you're on the right track. And along the way, even though if it's an upfront planning, even though it is fixed cost and fixed budget and fixed deadline, you need to sort of challenge yourself, challenge the customer, challenge whoever sent in the requirements or the order to you, to see whether this is what they want.
Okay.
So yeah.
So Felipe, the only questions are remaining for you.
Yeah. The second one, Jamil, I
Second
answered
one
it
is
in the
already-
chat. Yeah, throw
it's
that
already
over.
done.
There you go.
So you can go ahead and pick one you
Okay.
want.
I'll just go in order. I'll go one piece flow, baby. Going for the top.
Perfect.
Can you please share some applications that you have done, where to start? So I've done it with project teams. I've done it with architect teams, design teams, engineer teams. I've done it with trade partners. I've done it with IT people working construction, accounting people, human resources, legal, risk, every single part of the business. I've done Lean and Scrum. So all of it. You can start anywhere. Where should you start? You should take your hands, stick them out, and as far as you can reach, that's within your span of control. Start with yourself. Put those arms around yourself and start with yourself first. So if you're not already doing Agile or Scrum, there you go, just like Ali showed. You start with yourself first, and as you increase your capacity, you'll have more time to do this with other people. Find somebody else. Maybe they're on your team. Maybe they're not. Maybe you go to a side team that's in parallel, that you find somebody that needs help or wants help. Help the people that want help first. Don't try to transform your entire organization. Like Antonio and Ali have said, transformation is a dirty word. You should always be transforming if you're living and you're growing. So find that and start there. There's plenty of people around you that want to do this. It's almost a never-ending supply of them. And the final one, have I ever been able to overcome the often territorial nature between different trades and construction? Yes, I have, every single time. I've never had that conflict before. When you come to people with respect and honest curiosity about what makes them successful, the traditional barriers are changed because you've just changed the environment by yourself being changed. But if you come at it like, I'm the lean specialist, I'm going to tell all you people what to do, you just created a silo around yourself and you cannot be part of that team. So you have to come to them and let them see and talk and understand how it all interconnected, because we are all interconnected. Once you go and engage with different trades, you've already changed the system just by being there. So recognize, honor, respect that. Respect for people means respecting the humanity of all of us, and that's something core to Agile as well. So yeah, I've not had that problem.
Perfect. So we answered all the questions. By the way, just want to acknowledge one of the best group of people I had. No interruptions with mics and everything. It was one of the smoothest event I've done so far. So thank you everybody for being here. If you guys can switch on your videos, I just want to take a picture and then we can go ahead on our ways. I really hope that everybody was able to enjoy this and take some notes of it. For me, it was a very good learning. Thank you for the panel members for their time and the knowledge they have shared with us. It was a great session. Okay, so we are right on time. So, hi Topa, by the way, didn't get time to say hi. He's my friend. Farouk here as well. We have done some events in past.
Great job, Jamil.
Thank you very much. Rohit was here as well. He left. So I think it's about time. Unless anybody has anything to say, we can wrap up.
Thanks for organizing this. I mean, it has been probably pretty tough for you to, gather everyone together to set this apart and do this on your Saturday. But on your Saturday, we've collected. I'm not sure how many people have signed up and how many people were in the call throughout, but a lot of enthusiasts that were willing. They're spending their time and energy over here to share, to learn from each other, and I love to see that. So I really appreciate that as well.
Perfect. By the way, just to let you guys know, we do have one more next week where we are discussing about fintech, banking, mental health, and few other non-IT industries with some different panel members. So do join us there. Thank you everybody for being here. Really enjoyed together with all of you. Good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All of
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a
Bye,
good day.
everybody.
Have
Thank
a
you.
nice weekend.
Thanks. Bye.